Hi everyone, it's Suki. Welcome back to another live. Apologies for being a few minutes late, just had a few minor tech issues which are now resolved. So, as you know, I broadcast this through StreamYard. So, if you leave a comment and you want us to see your name, you're going to need to give StreamYard permission, else, no big deal. You don't want to give it permission to reveal name, not a problem. We'll still see the comment. Now, this has been broadcasted on a number of different platforms. Can somebody let me know you can hear me okay, see me okay? Perfect. Okay, let's rock and roll. I'm super excited about today's discussion. And it was prompted off a conversation I had with a potential coaching client. They run something like 800 temps, yet they don't have an ATS system. They are still using Excel sheets and so forth. So, which really surprised me. So I figured, why not bring in a guest who can talk more about the benefits, pros, cons of ATS systems, and correct some of the misconceptions and so forth. So on that note, let me bring in our guest today, Kelsey Burt.
Hi, Suki.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good. Kelsey, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Kelsey. I work at JobAdder, which is an ATS provider, and I have a background in recruitment, both in-house, agency, and then I entered the world of software, and now I've come full circle, helping recruiters leverage software to make their lives easier.
Perfect. So you really understand our world. So,
Yeah.
as I was just saying on the intro, what prompted me to reach out to you about potentially doing this live was a conversation I had with a client, a potential client, and they have hundreds of temps out, yet they don't have an ATS system.
Mm.
And when we were talking about it, they didn't quite realize the value and how much easier their life was going to be. So let me
Mm.
just dive straight in and ask you the first question. Why is it important to have an ADS system?
Sorry, the benefit of an ATS
Yeah.
system? So you just,
Why is it
yeah,
important to have one?
yeah. And I've been there myself, working on a recruitment team, living in spreadsheets. The major benefits of an ATS is having a single source of truth, and technology is there to help you. And having everything on a spreadsheet, you're really missing out on streamlined processes. You're really missing out on collaboration. Finding candidates really quickly, and in the industry, time is money. So you're not having that database, where everything is stored, everything's kind of everywhere on people's desktops, printed out. And then a spreadsheet can look nice and pretty when you start, and then as the team grows, you're like, why did someone color code that, or why is that not updated? And it just becomes an absolute mess. So the benefit of an ATS is really just a single source of truth, streamlined process, and making more money and hiring faster.
What about, I'm just thinking of it from a business owner's perspective and
Mhm.
even a leader's perspective, because how do you track activity on an Excel sheet? Or how do you
Exactly.
keep it updated and things like that? So what about some of
Mhm.
the important things around management reporting and actually visibility over your business?
Of course, I love that you mentioned that. That's another huge thing as well. The whole reporting and visibility part of an ATS. If you're in a spreadsheet, you're not able to track, how many candidates were contacted today or moved from this stage to this stage. Whereas an ATS will track that, or should track that. And that all comes into finding an ATS as well that we can talk about later, that works best for you. So like the team's actually using the ATS, right? So that's the goal of the ATS, that everyone's kind of living and breathing in that ATS. Those statuses are being updated. You're able to identify KPIs, as well as maybe any bottlenecks in the process. Again, streamlining that process, and making sure the team's being efficient with their time and hiring faster.
Yeah, because Marlon says, and making data-driven decisions, which 100%, right?
Mhm.
It's the data that's really important. Now, I was just thinking as you were talking, and I was thinking back to that particular client example that I gave you.
Mhm.
When you are using, and I'm just using Excel as an example. Replace that with whatever. I hope nobody has pen and paper. Um, oh, trust me,
You'd be surprised.
I started in this industry pen and paper. Literally way, and I'm showing my age there, but way back when it was pen and paper. um, but also without a decent ATS, I'm just thinking and I'm just thinking back to our summit earlier this year, all the other tech that's really going to enable your ability to hire faster, the decisions, the marketing, and all the other stuff. If you don't have a decent ATS system, you can't use access any of that tech neither. So
Mhm.
you're missing out on a whole other area, and marketing just being one of them, social media marketing just being one of them. Do you really find, like, I've only seen the one person recently who doesn't have an ATS system. Others have an ATS system. They love them. They hate them. They're tied into it. They want to move. And we'll get onto that in a second. But do you still find staffing agencies that don't have an ATS system?
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I was really excited to talk about this topic today as well, because there's so many individuals that I personally speak with that actually are coming in from spreadsheets and they kind of don't know what to expect when they're going into these evaluations. And they're going into these ATS evaluations blind. And they're very uneducated in the space. And I personally, even speaking with them, I'm kind of like, make sure when you're, going into your next demos that you're asking A, B, and C, just like as a heads up, like you should be asking these questions. So there are people that are still maybe, I think, it's habit though. You're used to a spreadsheet, it's comfortable, and ATS seems a bit scary, intimidating, the whole like implementation process and changing your internal processes. I think everyone's kind of comfortable with where they're at. So you have to really think about, what are my challenges today and what can, a good piece of technology help me? And then on your point as well, all the different, types of technology that are available, like marketing, sourcing, etc. How, if I get a new ATS that has all these integration capabilities, now everything's fully streamlined and my life is so much more easier. You're able to take advantage of those integrations. So yeah, just
Well,
something to think
one of the
about.
things that was going through my head as you were just talking is also the missed opportunities, right? Candidates just like, I'm using the word ghosting, be it client, be it candidate. There's those lost opportunities, right? We don't really get a true understanding of our time to fill, for example,
Mhm.
right? So I think there's this people, and you're the expert here, not me, but I should imagine going back to your comfortable, you said about people being comfortable, and it is fear of the unknown and changing things up, and something we often say is, if it's not broken, why fix it? But if you
Mhm.
don't know what, in this particular case, if you don't know what's the potential you're missing out on, you
Mhm.
could be watching this and thinking, no, my Excel sheet works for me.
Yeah.
It's all that other piece, right? Which brings me on to my next question. Now, I know you mentioned implementation. I am going to come back to that in a second.
Mhm.
What are some of the common mistakes people made, or what are some of the mistakes that people should avoid?
Mhm. I think right off the bat, going into an evaluation with no idea with what you're looking for. I think not having it doesn't have to be elaborate. Like I've seen, prospects have very elaborate checklists, and I've seen others that have very simple requirements. It doesn't have to be elaborate. I think you just have to have an idea of what you're requirements are, what your wants are, and what are your nice to haves, and go in with that mindset. So I think a common mistake is not having any idea of what you want. That is going to, sway your decision. If you see like a cool feature on an ATS, you'd be like, oh yeah, I like that feature. And then you purchase it, and at the end of the day, you're like, wait, that's not actually resolving my issue. So like having that concrete, guideline of what you're looking for, I think is really critical. And again, I see that on a lot of different evaluations of people just not knowing what they want. And, sometimes you don't know what's out there. So you do go in kind of being like, I'm just like kind of fact finding like what's out there. And then you start solidifying what you're looking for. And that's totally fair, but it's just being aware of, again, what you're looking for, and what's nice to have and requirements, and differentiating that. I think another common mistake as well is timeline. I think so many people, they're like, oh, my contract is up with X ATS, and I need to go live in 2 weeks. If you're needing that data migration, that's not going to happen. So, just not being realistic with timeline, not giving yourself enough time to actually evaluate. So many people are like, I need a new ATS since yesterday. Be realistic. It's an evaluation. You don't want to rush into making, a wrong decision. And you also don't want to be stuck with your contract up from the other ATS and not having, the full data migration complete in time. And I would say another thing is budget. Going in, wanting the world and only wanting to pay, the cheapest price. With ATSs, you really do get what you pay for. And so just being realistic with budget. Realistically, what are you willing to spend? And what features are you willing to spend that extra money on? And on that note as well, in terms of budget, do you want a system that works for you today, that's maybe cheaper, or do you want a system that you can really grow into and avoid, the evaluation again in a year's time and the data migration cost, et cetera, and really invest in a strong tool for a bit more money, but at least, your team's going to be using it, it's going to be meeting your needs better. So those are just big things to think about, and I would say common issues.
Yeah. Some of the thoughts going through my head.
Yeah.
Well, I do agree. Like, if you're a
Mhm.
perm business and you'd like to do contracting at some stage, don't buy the whole contracting package today. You don't need it, but you need something where you can say, okay, I'm ready for contracting, turn that part on, right? Because there's
Mhm.
going to be a cost. There's going to
Mhm.
be a cost associated to that. But you talked about, I got 2 questions for you. You
Mhm.
talked about timelines. How long should you ideally allow yourself? So if my contract's coming up for renewal December 31st,
Mhm.
when should I really start exploring the market?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on obviously ATS and what their onboarding time is, as well as if you do require the data migration. The data migration is the big determinant here, of giving yourself more time, because data migrations are complex. They do take time. Sometimes with certain ATSs, there's a wait time and there's testing and all that fun stuff. So if your contract is up December 31st, and you need to give X amount of notice to your current provider, you have to start working back on that. So, okay, I need to give notice 2 months before then. So that brings you to October notice. And then it might take 2 months for the data migration to happen. So I need to make a decision at bare minimum, September, October, so that I can go live hopefully by mid-December, so that all the issues are resolved by January 1st. So like you have to start thinking about that. You can't think, oh, my contract's up December 31st and I'll start looking November, December, I have time. You have to start thinking, how much time do I need for that data migration? If the ATS provider says 2 months, I need to give myself that 2 months at least, to get everything up and running, because you don't want to go live in a system and have the data still, being moved over and scrambling to get everything ready. So just being realistic with timeline on
So, so
that.
so we're talking 3-4 months
Mm.
is a good time frame. The other question
Yeah.
I have, based on what you said about identifying your needs, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it's true. You don't know what you don't know. But what are some of the, and maybe I'm putting you, it's a loaded question here, but what are some of the things that you say, look, but make sure you have this on your list?
Mm.
Other than
That's,
obviously data migration, right?
yeah.
And costs.
Yeah, I would say so from a functionality standpoint, the really basic ones that everyone should be looking at is like the search capabilities in the system, the how like the reporting, audit trail, email sync, any automation capabilities, customization is really key too. There's some systems that you're kind of they're out of the box solution, you're kind of stuck using them, whereas others are more customizable. So those are some things, and just I guess if you don't really know what's out there, is just think about like what are some features I wish I had to make my life easier, and just ask the ATS, like in your evaluation, ask them, like, can you do this? But I think those are the big things from a functionality standpoint. But another thing is that they should be looking at, I would say, contract. Is it contract? Is it subscription? Are you locked in for how long? Is there data limits? Are there user minimums? Like really that fine print. I think a lot of people can be like blown away on a demo, sign up, and then they're like, wait, I'm locked in. Or, maybe the pricing isn't as competitive as I thought it would be. So I think that's also something to keep in mind. And then on your note, when you had mentioned different modules and price points and everything, I can speak on behalf of Job Adder. Like we have a full system. We're very transparent about our pricing and everything in that sense. It's not module based, but a lot of systems are. You'll be demoed. Every single feature be quoted at X amount. You sign up, and you're like, wait, that's not what was on my demo. So just being very like questioning, like, okay, what's included at this price point, what's included in this package, and then what's included in this package. Because I think a lot of people see something, purchase it at the price that they're comfortable with, and then they're locked in. And I see that time and time again. And I even speak with people that are like, I'm locked in for the next like 6 months, but I want to get out. And yeah, I mean, that's another thing just to keep in mind as
I think
well.
one thing I would add to that, just from my own personal experience, is once you start using a system, and after a while you realize, actually, you know what, my business has evolved, blah blah blah. I'd love to be able to extract this data, these reports. The cost of then getting those reports,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right, that was one that shocked me. Um, it Yeah, it made a lawyer look cheap. So so that's something I definitely would look at. It's interesting. Someone's asking me what ATS system you currently use. I assume they're asking me. Um, I'm not going to say what ATS system I currently use, but it's a pretty robust system. However, I'm actually going through the process of looking at ATS systems at the moment because I've got to make a decision, right? So, as much as today's conversation is amazing for our listeners and everything else, for me as well, right? Because I'm going to go through, well, I am going through this process right now. Now, you mentioned budgets. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I get it. You get what you pay for. That's everything in life. But I think sometimes we go from, okay, I've got nothing, and I've got Excel and I'm paying nothing for this. Oh my God, I'm only going to pay 20. I only want to pay $20 for argument's sake, right? So you end up um, having a system that's $20 worth. And then you realize, oh my God, I needed this, I needed that. My personal take on that is, if you're in that situation, budget this into your cash flow. Don't just say I'm going for 0 to 20. So therefore, oh my God, that's a 20% increase kind of thing. A $20 increase, beg your pardon. Um, really look at it and budget it. And if you're going to be in that situation, earlier on you said 4 months, then time frame, make it a 6 month time frame.
Mm.
Make it a 6 month time frame. And on top of that, if you don't know what functionality you want and stuff like that, start writing it down now, right? Because
Exactly.
because we're doing that at the moment. And as I said, we've got a great system. Nothing wrong with the system itself. It's the other piece that's making me explore the market. But when you start writing that list without the pressure of, oh my God, I need to have an ATS system by the end of next month, it allows you to really sit down and explore, do I really need this? Is this a must have, or is this just me wanting everything, like bells and whistles that we're never going to use? Right.
Mm.
So, okay. So let's talk about, actually, no, before I move in, you talked about contract lock-in,
Yeah.
right? Subscription model, yada. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I I think I'm incorrect here, but I was under the impression you go anywhere, you have to sign up for a minimum of 12, 24, 36 months. There's a, and if you break that contract, and I'm only going back to all the conversations I was having with people when COVID
Hmm.
hit, right? Who were trying to downsize the number of seats they had and stuff like that. And they were like, no, you're tied into a contract till X
Hmm.
period. Am I right in saying that's not always the case?
Yes. So a lot of ATSs out there, and I can only speak on behalf of Job Adder. A lot of ATSs out there do have those contracts, right? And whatever their contract terms are, it depends on the ATS. So some of them have like minimum users, or like bundled packages based on like tiers of how many users you have, and then maybe there's like um, volume discounts. But a lot of them, you're locked into a contract at the end of the day, right? And on that note, in terms of Job Adder, I mean, we do have, if you want to lock into annual, you can, but we're a subscription model. You sign up and it's month to month. You can cancel at any time. Just give us, that 30 days notice. We can get you the backup, whatever else you need. But it's really easy and flexible. So it's not always the case that it's annual contracts.
I'm glad you told us that, because the question I was formatting to say is, do you mind telling us what yours is? Someone's saying having a customizable package up front sounds like a great idea. Can you adjust as your business grows? Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it depends on, being unbiased. It depends on which ATS you're speaking with, if they have different modules, and how it works for them. If you can customize what your package is. But speaking on behalf of Job Adder, again, we're very transparent with our pricing. It's the whole platform. You can customize it at no additional cost. And what's unique about Job Adder is we actually layer on top a bunch of marketplace integrations. So you can really, have a whole unified tech stack and really make it your own. And the beauty of that as well is as your needs start changing, you can actually swap out maybe different sourcing tools or automation tools, AI. It's new things are constantly coming out, different chatbots and functionality with that. So that's really, key differentiator of Job Adder is you have a fully customized ATS that you can leverage, and then layer on top and swap out the different technologies you need to really, again, have a very customized tech stack that's all unified and working together, again, to make your life easier.
Okay, so I want to come back to data migration.
Yes.
I'll be honest with you. The that even in my mind, that is just like, when I think of the costs, right? I'm just like, oh, right, because it's extortionate.
Hmm.
Um, what do you say to that when somebody like me says, "Oh, I'm stuck with X ATS because I've had them for 10 years. And I've got 100,000 records that I do want to, that I need to migrate, and the cost is just too much. So I'm going to stay put." So, but I'm
Hmm.
just being forced. It's the golden handcuffs, right? So what do you say to that? Are there any tips
Mm-hmm.
for getting that data migration cost reduced, or even eliminated for that matter. I don't know if that's possible, but what are your thoughts on that?
Great question. So in terms of data migrations, I mean, like that's the elephant in the room. No one wants to pay for a data migration. It's like everyone dreads thinking about that. But I think the mindset that, okay, if no one's using your ATS or your ATS is not working for you today, what is the it's like an investment. Yes, it's an upfront cost of X amount, but now I'm going to have actually a new ATS where everyone's actually going to be using it with better features and functionality that work for me. So thinking of it as an investment, but from the actual cost perspective, you know, again, I can only speak about job adder, but asking in your evaluation, what are the options for data migration? Does it cost different if I import less data or different types of data? So there's that could bring the cost down. Also, if you're using a very common ATS, and that ATS provider has done a bunch of data migrations with them, maybe that would also lower the cost. Maybe they have a special package for a data migration or discount for data migration with that specific ATS. So asking those types of questions. And then another thing to mention as well is, like you had mentioned, is there a way to avoid a data migration altogether? And so asking, is there a way for me to get that data into, the ATS myself? Just asking that and seeing what they say, because I've personally spoken with prospects that went into the evaluation saying, I need a data migration. And then as we continue conversations, they actually end up purchasing Job Adder without that data migration. And, implementation time is within a week versus 2 months, and they avoid that data migration cost. So there are ways to get your data in. I can speak again on behalf of Job Adder. There are ways to get it in at no additional cost, but you have to determine like how valuable is that data? Is it worth X amount of money doing the data migration? Is it clean? Is it valuable? Or do I want to start fresh? So asking yourself those questions and asking in your evaluation what the options are.
Now, as you were talking there, I was thinking, if you said the option where you bring in your own data, right?
Mhm.
I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's just going to be basic information, name, phone number type of thing, right? But not all the records, the notes, the job orders, and all emails and whatever else it is you're currently hosting, right? So I guess the question becomes, to your point, how valuable is that? And maybe one way around it is, with that timeline, we're saying 6 months, or maybe take an extra month and start cleaning up your data now. There's some great tools available for that as well, right?
Mhm.
Because that's one thing that always comes up. Always comes up. So one of the other things, again, there wasn't a name on who asked the question about which ATS system I use, but I said I use it's a well known it's a good ATS system. My reason for moving is not the ATS system itself, is the support. The support, I mean, we don't need training because we've been with it a while, but one of the notes I'd made is especially if you're going from not having a system to a system,
Mhm.
right? I should imagine that support is really, really important. What are some of the things that we should be looking out for? And again, some of the questions we should be asking?
Mhm. Yeah, and you know what? Support and training is always overlooked, I think, especially for those that have never used an ATS before. Because again, they don't know, what support they would need hypothetically with an ATS or what training they would need. And I have heard it, in people's evaluations, like, hey, I'm leaving X ATS because the support is absolutely awful, or our team's not using it. We don't even know how to use the system, and we're like 2 years in. So it's a huge thing to evaluate. So of course you're looking at the functionality of the system, payment terms, all that stuff, but the support. I think asking, what kind of support is available. Do you have a dedicated, support team? Where are they located? What is the response time? Is there an additional cost? How do I reach out to support? Are there self-serve, is there like a manual we can use? Is there additional like training modules? Are there webinars? Is there a communities page? Stuff like that is, I mean, again, it's probably not top of mind for someone and they're just thinking of like the functionality, but that is so key because you're investing so much money and time in a new ATS. What's the point if you're not actually going to be using it, or you're stuck, or the team's not, trained properly? So really looking at that, and then also asking about, that ties in with implementation as well, training and what support you have there.
Now, again, I know you can only speak for job adder, but even when you're talking to potential clients who are looking to come over to you, is cost normally just beg your pardon, is the cost of support and training part of the package, or does that tend to be a separate package that you have to ask about and you have to buy? Because then that changes the costs, right? So in your
Exactly.
experience, is it just part of the price, or how do you do it? Do I have to pay extra for training and support, or is it just part of the package?
Yeah, it depends really on which ATS. Like even back when I was in recruitment, if I needed additional training, because I implemented an ATS, and if I needed additional training, it was thousands of dollars for more time. And it was like a manual that I was using, and that was like a user manual. So it wasn't really user friendly. Whereas with Job Adder, our training, and again, I'm very transparent of what's like included. It's very inclusive. We 24/6 global support, response time within 20 minutes. We have full interactive training modules, webinars. We're coming out with a communities page so that all of our customers can like talk with each other. So very like lots of different options. And we have like a full support portal where they can raise a ticket, live chat, access any of the articles. They can use it like a Google search, and look at keywords and read articles, and there's videos. So there's lots of support included in Job Adder at no additional cost.
Excellent. And in your experience, you may not know this. Is that typically standard for most ATS? Do they typically include support in the price,
Yeah.
or is that an extra add-on? I mean, if you
Um,
don't know the answer, that's fine. I was just curious.
yeah. I know, I mean, some ATSs might have like basic support included, whatever they define that as.
Yeah.
And then you can pay more for more premium support. Again, it really does depend on
Is
ATS.
it
And
something you've got to put on your need list, right? So that need
yeah.
analysis, because if you're a large company and you have a tech person who can be dedicated to this, that's one thing because you've got the in-house expertise, right?
Hmm.
Um, but smaller company, you don't. So,
Hmm.
which brings me on to integration. We touched on it earlier about all the different software tools and what have you. One of the things that I want to talk about is integration. How easy is it for most tools to integrate with ATS systems? I know some
Hmm.
you have to be approved and you have to go and do this, and you're jumping through hoops to do that. And I know you got things like, is it Zapier that you can use as that bridge. But is that normal, or do most ATS systems have open AI and things like that?
Hmm. I can't speak necessarily on other ATSs, but that's definitely a question to ask in your evaluation. And I have noticed recently more people are asking, like, do you have an open API? And I love that they're asking that, because again, that's going to allow the system to grow with you, and again, have that unified tech stack, and you're going to get more use out of the ATS and longevity out of it. So yeah, I mean, it really does depend on the ATS. I would ask in your evaluation, do you have a marketplace that I can check out? And literally ask for that link on your demo, like after your demo, so that you can do your own research and poke around and be like, okay, they said they have some integrations, but it looks like it's like very limited with the options, and maybe I don't like using that sourcing tool, or maybe they're missing like the LinkedIn recruiter integration and this and that. So just really taking that in consideration in your evaluation. In terms of job, we do have like the full marketplace that's available on our website. We do have a full free open API, and we do have a Zapier landing page as well. So you can literally like type in what vendors you're thinking of, and you can play around with what triggers what action. So lots of options with Job Adder, but I think in any evaluation, ask them, what integrations do you have? And it's so funny when I go into these conversations, I'll ask, I say, what's your tech stack looking like today? And they'll be like, oh, just Outlook. And then as we continue the conversation, they're like, well, we also use LinkedIn Recruiter and QuickBooks and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, so I feel like a lot of people don't realize like that can all be integrated with your ATS. So asking, back office integrations, automation integrations, sourcing, productivity, scheduling, assessments. Someone signed up with Job Adder the other day immediately because they were looking for an integration with a specific assessment vendors that they wanted to use. So we had it. And that's what sold them on that. So just thinking about the integrations when you are going into an evaluation.
I mean, I'm just conscious of time now, but we can keep talking, but it's amazing how much there is to think about when looking at your ATS system. And then there's a lot of choice out there. Well, that's true of everything, right? I get that. But it's really looking at your ATS system as more than a place where you park your candidates, your clients' details, and job orders and things like that, right? There's just capable of doing so much more. So what would your final advice be to someone that's watching this right now, thinking of, you know what? Like the date I gave, December 31st, right? What would be your final advice to them? Obviously, check out Job Adder. I get that, right?
Obviously.
Obviously. But just outside that, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think having that checklist is key, right? A lot of the things that we spoke about today would be included in a checklist. So having the checklist of your requirements and your nice to haves, doing an analysis, I think, of your challenges and pain points today would also help with that, creating that list. And then on top of that, again, taking consideration timeline, mapping that out, budget, the training and support, like, having questions regarding that so you can easily compare different ATSs, what they're offering, the customization capabilities. Will it work for perm, temp, contract, in-house? Can you put in custom fields? Is there a cost? Custom workflows, etc. Like those are really big things to be asking. The integrations piece, and then I think finally, and we didn't touch on this, but product roadmap. A product, yeah, because you can be in on a demo and the product can look great, but has there been any updates recently with it? Like, what does the product roadmap look like? What's coming out? Are they a very progressive, dynamic ATS that's keeping up with the changing needs? Or are they very static? And is it like an older interface and clunky? So things to think about.
No, but that's really important though, right?
Yeah.
Because technology is changing so fast that if you want to get into bed with somebody that's staying updated. No, that's a really important one. The only other piece I was going to mention was just come back to budget a second. I almost think the better way to figure out what your budget is to talk to the different providers, then create your budget rather than say my budget is $50 a month. What can I get for that? And I'm only going to talk to people that do $50 a month. Right. I think just on that budget one, I would kind of slightly reverse that because then you become an educated buyer.
That is true. I think Just to challenge you on that though, if it's literally not in your budget though, then if you're really constrained with how much you can spend, being realistic with that, because then you don't want to be looking at all these other vendors that are a lot more money as well, that right? So it could go both ways, but maybe having like a nice range, like
Yeah,
yeah, some wiggle room there.
yeah. Because I'm just thinking gross, right? I'm just
Yeah,
thinking, well, I go and say, what do I get for 20 bucks? Well, then I'm only going to look at all of that. So I'm not going
that's
to get
true.
that. My mind isn't going to get open to other stuff. Again, don't know what I don't know, right? So,
Exactly.
fantastic. Listen, thank you ever so much for your time. Now, if someone watching this wants to watching it live or on replay, wants to reach out to you and talk about, and they consider thinking of changing their system, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Um, LinkedIn would be, I think, easiest. So feel free to just shoot me over a message or LinkedIn request, and then I can send over my availability and we can chat.
Fantastic. Well, Kelsey, thank you ever so much for your time. Really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
And I'm sure we'll chat again.
Yes, thank you so much, Siki.
Bye.
Okay, take
Bye.
care.